He was smart, he was handsome, he was polite, and he was pure evil. Behind that charming smile was a man who murdered more than 30 women across 6 states. This is the true story of Ted Bundy, the serial killer who fooled the world. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. Raised in a lie, he believed his grandparents were his parents and that his real mother was his sister. That early deception shaped the man he would become: detached, manipulative, and hungry for control. He was a good student. He studied psychology at the University of Washington. And he didn't look like a killer. He looked like a politician. In fact, he worked on a political campaign. He volunteered at a suicide hotline, and no one suspected a thing. It started in 1974. Young women were disappearing in the Pacific Northwest, first in Washington, then Oregon. The cases had a disturbing pattern. All victims were young women, long brown hair, parted in the middle college-aged, and all vanished without a trace. One of the first confirmed victims was Linda Ann Healy. She disappeared from her basement bedroom, her bed neatly made, her clothes missing, and a pool of blood on her pillow. Bundy had a terrifying method. He'd fake an injury, wear a sling, pretend he had a broken arm, and ask women for help carrying books or loading items into his car. And once they were close enough, he would knock them unconscious and drive them to remote areas where he raped and murdered them. Then he'd do something most killers don't. He'd go back to the bodies, sometimes days later, to revisit the scene, to relive the moment. From Washington, Bundy moved his crimes to Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. Back then, police departments didn't share information the way they do today. So every time he moved, he started with a clean slate. In Utah, he attempted to kidnap Carol Duranch. She escaped and later helped identify him in court. In Colorado, he abducted more women. But this time, the police were closing in. In 1975, Bundy was arrested in Utah for attempted kidnapping. Police found handcuffs, rope, an ice pick, and pantyhose in his car. He was eventually charged and convicted, but the story was far from over. In 1977, he escaped from a courthouse in Aspen, Colorado, by jumping out of a second-story window. 6 days later, he was caught. But a few months later, he escaped again, this time for good. He cut a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell, crawled through the plumbing, and walked right out. The guards didn't notice for hours. After his escape, Bundy made his way to Florida. He adopted a new identity and enrolled at a local university, but his hunger returned. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What happened next was pure horror. In less than 15 minutes, he murdered Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman. He bludgeoned 2 other girls nearly to death, then walked out the front door. Just weeks later, he kidnapped 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her school. Her body was found in a hog shed. On February 15, 1978, Bundy was pulled over by a police officer. He was driving a stolen car, carrying IDs from previous victims, and his hair matched samples found at the crime scene. He was finally caught for the last time. Ted Bundy's trial became a national obsession. He represented himself in court, turning the trial into a media circus. He smiled for cameras. He played to the audience. And he even proposed to a witness, live during court. In 1979, he was convicted of the Chi Omega murders. In 1980, he received a second death sentence for Kimberly Leach, but he didn't go quietly. In his final days, Bundy confessed to killing 30 women across 7 states. Investigators believe the number could be much higher, possibly over 100. He gave chilling details. He wanted to delay his execution. He even tried blaming pornography for his behavior. On January 24, 1989 at 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside the prison, crowds celebrated. They cheered, held signs, and lit fireworks. America's most notorious killer was finally dead. Ted Bundy is remembered not just for his crimes, but for how ordinary he seemed. He wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. He was in plain sight, charming, intelligent, likable. He taught the world a terrifying truth. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes, it wears a smile. If this story shook you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real, true crime cases that dive deep into the minds behind the madness. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones you never see coming.